So I'd like to throw now to John Hodgon. John is a threatened species coordinator with the Queensland Department of Environment and Science. He'll talk about how landholders can be proactive in managing vulnerable species on their land. So please, John, take it away.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is John Hodgon. I'm the manager of the Threatened Species Coordination Unit within the Department of Environment and Science, which is part of the unit called Threatened Species Operations. As you can see from the slide, there were two new regulations that came into effect on the 29th of April this year. They were the Nature Conservation Animals Regulation and the Plants Regulation. Under these two new regulations, there is now a total of 1,020 threatened species in Queensland, of which more than 2/3 of those are plant species. First of all, I want to give you a little bit of an introduction into what I'm going to talk about today. As you can see on the slide, this is Boronia rapanda, which is a threatened species found in the Stanthorpe granite belt area. It's found both on private property and protected areas. So to set the scene a little bit, under the Nature Conservation Act 1992, there is legislative protection for land that is managed by government agencies such as national parks. This also includes joint management with First Nations people and other protected areas such as nature refuges and special wildlife reserves. Since late last year, nature refuges, which are privately held conservation reserves, are considered protected areas under the Act. But what about privately held land used for primary production? How can threatened species be conserved and the threats to those species mitigated while allowing primary production to occur in conjunction? I'm also going to give you an introduction into the new Government Threatened Species Program 2020-2040, which has a renewed focus on partnerships. And the department needs these partnerships to assist in achieving conservation goals for threatened species. I just want to talk a little bit about the Threatened Species Program at the moment. As you can see on the slide, this is another one of our threatened species. This is a tropical frog called the Australian lacelid. As you can see from the slide, that's how it's got its name. So the Threatened Species Program was developed using a project logic framework, and workshops are undertaken both with staff and external experts. Through these series of workshops, the program was developed. The program is based on 6 guiding principles, and they are that everything that we do and every decision we make is guided by the best available knowledge, so it's evidence-based. Everything we do must be collaborative, so we work with partners across sectors, and I think this is an important part of the program, which I'll talk a little bit more about shortly. The program needs to be culturally appropriate, so we need to engage more with First Nations people. There needs to be strong governance and leadership within the department so that the whole program is integrated and has an accountable approach to threatened species management. And of course, it must be cost effective. One of the jobs of my unit is to attract investment by external bodies so that we can use that investment against some of the program priorities. The program also needs to be adaptive in that it must learn from experiences, both with internally and externally, and continually improve on what we do through the program. There has been an implementation plan developed for actions under the program, and these end outcomes are grouped under 4 streams. That is protecting threatened species on protected areas and other tenures, mitigating the impacts to those threats, recovering threatened species by undertaking recovery actions, and this is in conjunction with both internal and external organisations. And also importantly, the program aims to enable all Queenslanders to participate in the protection and recovery of threatened species. There is a public summary of the program available on the web. There is a link there at the bottom of this slide, but also if you search Queensland Threatened Species Program, you will find the public facing summary of the program. So planning for management. How do we plan for management? As you can see on the slide, that's a photo of an Edgbaston goby, which I believe some of you are undertaking a field trip to have a look at some work that I'll talk about a little later on as well around that particular species. So by their nature, threatened species are generally limited in distribution. Not all of them are represented in protected areas. And therefore, conservation on private lands is a key element of protecting those threatened species. Threatened species operations has responsibility for conservation recovery across all land tenures. And the Nature Conservation Act sets out broad management principles for all the categories of threatened species. That can be found in the Act. When planning any recovery actions for a threatened species, there's plenty of guidance available. That can be through recovery plans or conservation advices. There is advice available from recovery teams who are groups of experts around a species. There are also what we call recovery action plans, which is something that we are working on. These plans will be done through a workshop situation where we bring together all of the stakeholders, all of the experts to work out what needs to be done on ground to recover these threatened species. There also may need to be a bespoke management plan or guidelines done for a particular species, and this may need to be done to cover off on complex situations. Many threatened species have special requirements, including pest management, fire management, genetic management, and there are a number of ex situ options available, such as translocations. All of these things are things that threatened species operations can provide advice on. If we don't have the advice in-house, we can certainly access experts on a particular species. That is a photo of a northern hairy-nosed wombat, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's one of the programs that my unit is involved in delivering. So now I want to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities for conservation of threatened species on private held lands. One of the challenges for us is that many landholders may be suspicious about what the government intends to do, and they are nervous when a government person approaches them about a threatened species that may occur on their land. So one of the challenges also is developing trust amongst those landholders. The department's not about coming along and acquiring land, and we can build this trust through building partnerships with organisations. And these organisations generally have local knowledge and credibility within the community. So by building a partnership with the department, we are able to link into that local knowledge and credibility. There are some non-government organisations that are already seeking to establish ARCs on private property, and that is done in conjunction with the department providing advice. Any recovery actions need to be done in line with species requirements, and those actions may well be laid out in a recovery plan or conservation advice. And one of the things, again, that my unit can do is provide technical advice and assistance for anybody that wishes to undertake conservation work on private property. Again, if we don't have the in-house expertise, we can certainly access it. There's an opportunity to leverage funding from different sources through the department. Another couple of important points are that not all threatened species are represented on protected areas, and so it's important that we try and conserve these species on privately held lands. Also, not all threatened species occur on productive land. You don't need a large proportion of a property to be used for conservation. Often, this can be areas that are of no use for primary production. There's certainly no obligation on landholders to actively conserve threatened species, but where a landholder is interested in doing so, then we are more than happy to assist. Internally, we do have a bit of a challenge, and that is we're going through a transition phase to a new structure to align more closely with the Threatened Species Program. I just want to talk about some of the benefits of partnerships through organisations to conserve threatened species on private held areas. So interested landholders can achieve conservation of threatened species. It can provide landholders with green credentials, which is, I think, an emerging issue these days. Landholders can be confident that through a partnership, all legislative requirements and obligations are being met. They can contribute to departmental conservation, and through partnerships, we increase the capacity to achieve the department's conservation goals. And I just want to highlight again that through these partnerships, we can achieve some of the Threatened Species Program end outcomes, that is securing threatened species on protected areas and other tenures, supporting and enabling Queenslanders to participate in protection and recovery, and also collaborative implementation of the program to work with partners across sectors. So now I want to talk about some examples of these partnerships that we are establishing with external organisations to conserve threatened species. Now, the way we do it is under what we call a collaborative agreement, which is a signed document. The department formally enters into a collaborative agreement with an organisation. And in terms of developing that agreement, that is what my unit does as part of our roles and responsibilities. So we would work in with an organisation to develop a collaborative agreement that meets everybody's expectations. So the first example I want to talk about is a partnership between the department and Desert Channels Queensland. And again, I believe some of you are going on a field trip to actually have a look at this project. So basically, the collaborative agreement is about improving and restoring threatened species habitat on private property around Longreach. There are a number of artesian springs that need to be restored. There are some landholders that are very keen to undertake this work, and this project will help those people achieve what they would like to do in terms of restoring some of these springs. So initially, this collaborative agreement is going to focus on a project to restore artesian springs on a private property, and that is habitat for edge-bastion goby and also other threatened species. The project is drawing on technical and logistical knowledge from various sources, including some of the leading researchers in freshwater fish and also the Australian and New Guinea Fishes Association. One of the things that desert channels can do under this collaborative agreement is they can coordinate interested landholders, which the department doesn't have the capacity to do. Again, it allows for all the legalities to be met in regard to moving and keeping threatened species. And again, landholders can have confidence that those legal aspects are taken care of. Desert Channels Queensland is hoping to use this as a model for future spring restorations on other properties. And as the collaborative agreement moves forward, additional projects will be added over time. I think this is an example of how a local based organisation has contacts and also the confidence from local people to be involved in threatened species work on their property. The next example I want to talk about is about the Australian New Guinea Fishes Association. So this is another collaborative agreement that we are developing in conjunction with the association. So this is a group of people that has a great depth of knowledge and experience in keeping threatened fish species. They are already involved in a number of projects they have set up themselves through various funding sources, such as Fish in Schools program. And one of the advantages for the department is that we do not have the expertise in-house for these species. We are keen to learn from the association, and one of the things that this collaborative agreement will achieve is to produce better knowledge about what threatened fish species are on protected areas and what the conservation outcomes could be both on protected areas and beyond them. Some of the work that the association members may do involves keeping insurance populations of freshwater fish species and invertebrates that can be subsequently used to re-establish populations on private property. So for example, the edge-bastion goby may be one species that the association can keep and maintain an insurance population. Individuals from that population can then be translocated into restored springs. From the department's point of view, this is a great opportunity to work with a group to learn from them and also upskill our knowledge around these species and how to monitor them and those sort of things. The last example I want to talk about is another collaborative agreement that we're currently developing with the Stanthorpe Rare Wildflower Consortium. And again, this is another organisation that has a great depth of knowledge and experience that the department lacks for some of the threatened species found around the Stanthorpe area. The agreement will probably focus on 2 threatened species that are highly restricted initially that are not found on protected areas. So there's a Crevelia and a Eucalypt around Stanthorpe, which are threatened species. Both of them are highly restricted in distribution and, as I said, not represented on protected areas. One of the things that we're looking to do with the consortium is to develop recovery action plans for these species and possibly others. And so through that process and using the expertise of the consortium, we'll be able to develop a recovery action plan which basically sets out the on-ground recovery actions that need to be undertaken for these species. Under the Recovery Action Plan, strategic management directions and objectives will be developed, and this basically guides both the department and any other stakeholder for that matter in what actions need to be undertaken for different species. They also have the local knowledge and contacts the department doesn't. So in summary, there are many opportunities to collaborate. There are benefits with both landholders and government, and threatened species operations are very keen to work with partners to achieve conservation of threatened species, both on protected areas and private properties. Thank you very much.